Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Money Healing Podcast. And today's episode is special, just like every episode is special. This month, it has a theme, and the theme is self-love. And to get us started in this beautiful series on the Money Healing Podcast, I've got one of my mentors here with me, Marina Yanay-Triner. She has been monumental in helping me becoming more, I don't know, like more better. Well, more impactful in how I help my clients heal their money wounds. And I am just so excited to have her here on the podcast. Hi, Marina.
Hello, my dear. I'm so happy to be with
So
you.
we're going to be talking about receiving. So I do feel like part of the equation or the formula of self-love is knowing how to receive. And I get this question a lot from my clients, especially in one of my programs, CFA, which is all about creating fulfilling abundance of how do I receive abundance? And we always hear it on social media, the whole thing with like, slow down, slowness. Okay, what if slowing down feels like danger to your nervous system because we live in a system where we are conditioned to give, value, especially as women, we're always giving, right? So I brought in the big guns for you all. I brought in Marina, and we're going to be talking about this. So, Marina, welcome to the Money Healing Podcast. I am sure this won't be the first or the last time you're here. You're gonna, everybody's gonna love you, and I cannot wait to talk more about this and share more about your personal experience with receiving. And it's just something I grapple with, everybody grapples with, and what is your take on this, just in general, before we start zooming in?
I really like what you've already brought up. Honestly, I feel like you and I connect so much also in terms of our life story. Yes. And there's so much around like over responsibility. Mm-hmm. I feel like, especially for immigrants and minorities, definitely. Because we learned through our heritage that in order to get anywhere, you have to do extra. And when you're doing, you're not surrendered. Like when you're doing, you're not in receiving mode. Yes. Receiving mode is a very surrendered mode. And one of my I made a mistake of not looking up. I knew I would forget her name, but I will send it to you.
Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yes. There's an amazing author that talks about how receiving is actually much more vulnerable than giving.
Absolutely.
And I believe that's so true. And also, she talks about it more in the context of sex, but I think it's relevant in all fields, really, that kind of like, who are you giving and who are you receiving for? Ooh. Is it for me? Is it for somebody else? Like, for instance, when you're receiving a compliment and you're like, no, it's just because I'm wearing this shirt today. Like, you're like blocking it, and you're actually not giving pleasure to the other person. Because who doesn't love giving? It feels amazing.
If I give you a present and you're like, no, that's like, excuse me. I'm trying to give you something here. You know, the giver is the receiver, right? Yeah, I love that point a lot.
Yes. So those are some of my initial thoughts on it. And around like over responsibility. Mm-hmm. And feeling like we always have to do, and we have to do it excellently. Perfect. And we have to do it over the top. Perfect. Like more than perfect. And that's the only way to actually get something in return. Yeah. That's like so exhausting. And it also really blocks that receiving, because you're just not giving, you're just not opening the space. You don't have space in your body. Your body is like full of stuff and doing and trauma activation. All of that stuff. Which we could talk about. Of course we're going to talk about. Yes. Oh my God. I was wondering who's going to bring the T word up first. We should do a drinking game. Every time we say trauma, we have a drink.
Trauma is not funny, y'all, but it's just that in my space, in my line of work, in Marina's, we just talk about trauma all day long, and we actually like talking about it because it just is so revealing and it's so liberating. So I love that we both have a positive, perspective to that word. So, of course, our trauma and as collective trauma and our individual traumas has a lot to do with our capacity to receive, because if we were conditioned by our parents or by our caregivers that you will only, you will receive when you give, you're always waiting for something. If you were to receive from a client or receive from the universe, which is basically the same thing. So if your relationship with receiving has been conditional or all your life, you are always going to wait to see what is expected of you. Whereas our relationship with the universe is very different to that, because the universe gives and it doesn't wait to receive from you, even if it was like that with your parents. And even when you know this cognitively, logically in your brain, your nervous system still doesn't know that, because it's still subscribed to an outdated model, let's just say. So I have clients that are like, so this person gave me a compliment and I felt very uncomfortable because I thought I was expected to give it back to them. I don't know how to receive. Is it safe to receive? So let's talk about safety in receiving, and then safety in resting, because resting in our society, as much as we want to rest, like if I tell my mom, why don't you rest? Like, what do you mean? Why would I want to rest? And I don't even mention the word retirement to her, even if she's like up in her 60s. It's like I'm asking her to die or something, God forbid. But like the whole notion of retiring, especially for our parents' generation, and you brought up a very good point of that, we're immigrants, right? My parents are not immigrants. I am an immigrant. You are an immigrant. And we are told, or are, we had to begin from scratch. So we have a lot to unpack here. A lot.
Oh my God. Hold on. I need to take notes on all the things you just said so I can remember. There was safety, there was
I know.
rest,
Okay,
there was
okay. Let's just
okay.
let's just rein it in a little bit. Let's begin with talking about where was I? So is it safe to receive?
Yeah, I think that one of the things is also like when in childhood you received bad shit.
Yes.
Like when I feel like our parents and our caregivers are kind of like stand-ins for the universe. Because then when you're older, whatever you feel that you deserve to receive or whatever, like as you mentioned, you're always like scared that you have to give back. The universe is represented by how your parents were towards
Absolutely.
you. And if there was a tit for tat, or if you received violence, or if you received things that were not safe or were overstimulating, like you were very sensitive. I'm guessing some people listening to this are, and that was not respected, and your emotions were not respected, and you were receiving way too much or way too little. Like you were not receiving enough love. You were receiving too much
Yep.
criticism. You were receiving too much, yeah, any of those things. Then you're going to expect that as an adult from the universe, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it. You're going to be expecting that. So you're going to be expecting that it's not safe, that it's a scary thing, that you can get hurt, that you can be super vulnerable. And when it comes to rest, like when you logically think about it, like let's say we're talking about a cup of water. The cup of water to receive needs to be
Yeah.
empty, needs to have some
Yes.
emptiness. And so like when you're resting, you're creating emptiness, you're creating like void. And what is fucking scarier than void to all of us? Like
Yes,
nothingness. Nothingness.
especially when we have repressed emotions, right? When we know that being quiet and that nothingness, what do we see? We see what we don't want to see. And that's fair enough. Sometimes the things that are inside of us, we can't face them on our own. we're not supposed to face things on our own. I came to this conclusion not long ago that the brain of mine that knows how to hold space for clients and knows how to do all the somatic work and all the beautiful things that I do with clients is not the brain that I have when I am triggered. They're two very different brains. So we expect that when we ask for help or when we feel like we can't process emotions on our own, that we're weak, that we don't know how to. P.S. No one knows how to process emotions because it's a skill you learn. So when we tell someone you gotta rest, of course, the what they call the monkey mind is gonna come online. The distraction is gonna come online. I don't like the term monkey mind, but it's how people can understand, right? It will come online when we have things, when we have shit that we haven't processed and we're too scared to look at. And I want to say that's fair enough. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also when you've learned that resting is
Oh yeah,
dangerous,
laziness,
when you've learned,
laziness. Labeling
Mhm.
it as lazy, right?
Yeah, and that it doesn't bring you anywhere. Like, yes, it's lazy, and for our
Hmm.
ancestors, they had to do a lot in order to get stuff. It's like they didn't have, we have all this information. And for us, I believe in our age, the skill is to discern. So it's like actually being minimalist, like being like, this is the right information. I don't need more. It's enough. Like this paragraph is all I need, because there's so much and it's so easy to get to it. So really, like, I feel like the biggest skill in our time is the ability to do less. And it's so hard. It's so hard because we're still in survival mode. Like, our brains and our bodies are still wired to how our
Hmm.
ancestors were, and they needed to be in survival mode. And for us, we need to be in rest mode so that we can receive more. And that's just like such a
It
mind fuck. And it's
is.
like we're wiring everything that we believe to be
Yeah,
true. And I'm curious about your journey with
sure.
resting personally. Like, how, because I know you like take a whole month off and all these cool things. And how did you get to the point where you could do that?
Well, I always say that if you don't rest, your body will do the resting for you. You will be on forced rest, right? So I do feel like I'm a manifesting generator in human design, and I sometimes have the impression that I can do everything all together, all at once, that like that title of the movie. And I do overwhelm myself, but I've come to a point in my relationship with my body to where I start recognizing the signs of symptoms of like, okay, I'm overworking. And if I don't stop now, I will burn out. And if I burn out, no one is going to be happy. Not my clients, not my husband, not my RB, not my dog, no one, especially first and foremost myself. And for me, it starts with a feeling of freeze, right? So one, like, I would be full force. I know it's going to happen tomorrow, for example. Like, for the past 3 days, I've been like really extroverted, interviewing, client coaching, and like really working on my program and doing all that stuff. And I know that tomorrow morning, if I expect myself to perform in the same level, my body's going to say, no, no, absolutely no. And I will feel that freeze response in my nervous system of like, no. And if I keep pushing, I will go into shutdown. If I listen to it, and I just create 4 hours in my morning where I'm just sitting and watching Gaia TV, for example, or like, I mean, Gaia TV is very productive because I'm learning something. If I sit and read fiction, to you posted something not long ago of like, I do have fiction books that are just on standby. Like, if I rest and I empty that cup, because we can't receive into a full cup, right? Like you just said. So emptying my cup, and maybe later on, if I feel like working, then it will come naturally without me pushing. But again, that came with a lot of trial and error. It didn't just, I can afford to take a day off because I know how my body works. And I know that if I cram a lot of work in 3 days, that works best for my body as a manager, for example. But to your point, is that if we're not home, if we're not present in our body, how can we receive? If you ask me for a present and I come to your house and to deliver this present and you're not home, how can I give you the present? If we are not home in our bodies, how
Right.
can we receive from the universe what it is that we're asking for? And that begins with that resting and beginning with feeling safe in your body. And that's why we do all the somatic work. We don't do the mental stuff, you and me. Yeah. Yeah. What
Absolutely.
about you? Oh,
And
okay.
I'm really
Mm.
glad that you just said, like you just referred to an experience that happened yesterday, and like you know what's coming, because I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Like in our industry, it's always like the before and after, and now,
Yeah.
like I'm just never burnt out, and I just feel so great all the
I
time.
know.
And
And I'm like, money is just pouring into my PayPal while I'm like, okay, y'all, I was talking about that in my community this morning of the coaching online world is so distorted, right? It's so distorted.
it's insane. It's so insane. Like I feel like now as I've fully transitioned into business coaching, like my mission is to
Yes.
disrupt this thing because it's so strong. And not that I want to say like life sucks as a as a coach, you know,
It
but it's
doesn't.
more like yeah, it's like being aware of how we get to a balanced state because also like you don't want to you know how they say you don't want to give from an empty cup, like you don't want to be an empty cup in the sense of completely like never
Mhm.
mobilizing because our nervous system wants to mobilize and it wants to immobilize, like both in a balance. Like we want to
Yes.
experience all of those things. We don't want to be all the time immobilized or all the time mobilized. And I actually remember, so I think you know this, I have had the worst burnout last year.
Mm.
And I basically had to take naps before client calls and after client calls. Like
Wow.
I couldn't even have a client call without naps. My hair was falling
Oh.
out. I was getting my period twice a month. I was like a wreck. Yeah, it was so bad. There were a lot of factors to it. Part of it was work and this trauma loop that I went into around work and
Mm.
money. And part of it was challenges in my relationship. And part of it was the war. Like so many, you know, just so many things at once. And really kind of not respecting my own nervous system. But when I actually started to pay attention because I had to, I started resting a lot. And I remember one day I felt this like anxiety that I didn't want to rest. And I tuned into it and I was like, this is really interesting. This is actually my body saying, you've rested a lot and like you want to do something. And that's not bad, you
Yeah.
know? You just you want to mobilize. Like it feels good. You want to like do a little workout or like do something like exciting because your system is like kind of done resting. So I think it's so tricky, and we as humans like really want to be black and white and just say, you know, rest all day or like work your ass off. And there's nothing in the middle where it's like sometimes you need to rest and sometimes you need that excitement and you know, you need to create and it feels really good and it's really tuning into the energy behind it. Like what is the energy? Is the energy one of unsafety and trauma driven or is the energy like really just nourishing? Like I like to feel it as like nourishment energy.
I'm like smiling from ear to ear. Marina, I'm so happy you're on my podcast. Thank you. I
Oh,
just love
I'm
hanging
so
out with
happy
you.
for you.
I'm
Me
you brought up
too.
so many beautiful things just in that beautiful share. First, I just want to say that y'all, our personal life has a lot to do with the state of our nervous system. If we're going to sit here and expect to just like be happy and abundant all the time, we're gaslighting ourselves. Marina, you went through the war, like you are in Costa Rica, but your both your countries are in war right now, and it's really
Yep.
hard. It's really hard, and all of these things are taxing. You know, you mentioned your relationship. You mentioned like there's a lot of I moved twice in 18 months, and it's just so I hear a lot of people that are so harsh on themselves of like, oh, I've been in a slump. I'm like, what was happening in your personal life? What was going on? Oh, the war. And I was fighting with my husband and we moved. And like, yeah, all these things contribute to the how regulated you are. And I'm not saying, and we're none of us are saying that we need to be regulated all the time. We just need to honor the ebbs and the flows of your nervous system, right? Like sometimes you are dysregulated. That
Exactly.
doesn't mean you're a bad person. And that like whole culture of like love and light and you need to raise your vibe to receive, fuck that. That is very toxic. And that is something that sometimes spend months with my one-on-one clients helping them unlearn that, because that is another part of like gaslighting yourself, further repressing emotions, because anger is a good emotion. It's an emotion, right? All emotions are just part of
Absolutely.
being human. Just because you're angry or sad, it doesn't mean that you're going to live in scarcity all your life. I don't know who started this whole thing with like raise your vibration, because that's not true. A lot of times I make really good money by being just true to myself, right? I'm sitting there on the couch.
Oh, I'm so happy you said
Yes, I sit
that.
there on the couch crying because I'm processing something, and then I have a new client. I was, according to the books, low vibe because I was crying, but in reality I was high vibe because I was in alignment with my vibe, and my vibe is high. It doesn't matter what my emotional state is. I am Nadine and my vibe is high, full stop. That's it. And when I'm aligned with
Oh,
it, that's when I have high vibes. Not when I'm aligning to this pie in the sky fucking vibration that I'm supposed to like succumb to and be oppressed by and try to align with. No, I align with my energy.
it's so true. Like the repression of emotions to
Yes.
me, like that's what I'm hearing you say is like it's kind of like pushing down the money.
Mhm.
It's like, no, like I'm repressing like life force. And life force looks all kinds of ways. By the way, it's funny that we're talking today. I have to share the
Please.
story. This is like so funny. My partner and I have been like, so bad. And I won't even get into it. I will probably record a podcast on this later, but really good in the last week. And he took me on a date, and he took me to the money museum basically of
Oh my
Costa
god.
Rica, which is hilarious. And I was like, seriously, Thelma, this is so good. And I took like a million pictures of the, in museums
Yeah.
where they write a little bit about different like exhibits. It was so symbolic, like so much, like so many words kind of popped
Mm-hmm.
out to me about different things. It was just really, really cool. And we were talking about around safety, because for me money feels like safety, and that is a problem because it's really challenging for me to feel safe when I'm not making
Yeah.
money. And I know that then money is like, well, then I'm not going to come, because you have to learn to feel safe without money. And so we were kind of chatting on the way home about like how can I feel safe without money. And one of the things I said is actually tuning into symbols
Mm.
and metaphors and like synchronicities and things that just make me feel, especially like something really interesting is I feel like every few months I go through a little breakthrough around something specific in my life. It happens all the time. Like, let's say boundaries or whatever, or money or whatever. And then suddenly I start to see like the same, like, sort of message everywhere. I'll see a random Instagram post. I'll read a random thing in my book. Like, it's just
Yes.
like everywhere. And that actually makes me feel so safe because I feel like the universe is like,
Synchronicity.
you're on the right
Yep.
path. Like, I know it sucks and I know it's really hard. I know it's really hard right now, but you're just like doing what you're supposed to be doing. So just keep doing it, because I think that the most challenging thing about receiving is actually trusting that you're going to.
Yeah.
That like it's
It's
gonna
true.
come, and just like trust yourself and just keep going.
Trusting that you are going to, and trusting that when you don't receive, it's just about divine timing. Sometimes if you don't receive what you want, it doesn't mean that you are in scarcity. Ooh, it's your scarcity mindset. Ooh, it's not that. Sometimes it's just not the right time. Sometimes it's not the right thing, because a lot of times what we don't know, if we don't do the money work, is that, and we talk about this in CFA a lot, is are we manifesting from woundedness, or are we manifesting from our higher self, from our, authentic self? When we're manifesting from authenticity, it has a very different result and intention than when we manifest from our woundedness, right? But I really want to like backpedal a little bit and just I feel like I want to defend money. I feel like money and I are such good friends now that I want to say that sometimes when we rely on money for safety, it's not that money says, I don't want to come to you. I feel like, if I'm relying on my husband to be my best friend and my sister and my girlfriend and my also partner and my sounding board and my therapist, that's not fair. Right? That's not fair. I need 5 people. Well, 4 people. So my partner can do the romantic sex stuff. And then I can have a coach or a therapist or whatever, both. And then I have a best friend. And then I have a, whatever, right? Like that. These roles are not
Totally,
my
totally.
husband's. When we connect so many roles onto money, money can only help you with one role. Money's role is financial security, but we attach everything, our worth, our abundance, our blah blah blah, all of that on top of money, and money cannot perform because it's not its job. And then we just diss money, and it's like, but what am I did my job. I'm here for financial security. I can't be your boyfriend. I can't be your mom. I can't be the stand-in for secure attachment that you never had, that safety that you never had. So yeah, that's just I just wanted to share that.
That's such a great point, and it makes me think like this is why, in order to, well, for anything really, like to have a good
Yeah.
relationship, to make money, like you need to do so much work that is actually not related to
Oh yeah.
money, that is actually not related to your
Mhm.
relationship. It seems like it's not directly about like an argument you had with your
Yeah.
partner. It's about so many other things, like how to have good friendships so that you can feel supported there, and how to cook healthy
Yeah.
food, and like all these other things that you're like, how is this going to help me make money? But
It
it
totally
totally
does. I
does.
know. I always say, show me your money archetypes, and I'll even tell you how you do your dishes. And everybody's like, what? Because how you do one thing is how you do everything. And the funny thing is, a lot of people, not a lot, I would say maybe a handful of people have graduated from my programs, not only with a better relationship with money, but actually being in a secure, attached relationship for the first time. And it's because we don't just talk about money, we're talking about attachment, trauma. So when we heal at the root, it will have a ripple effect on your relationship life, your health life, the way you cook, the time that you put aside for to cook yourself a healthy meal, of course your finances, the way that you relate to your clients, the way that you price yourself, if you're an employee, the way that you work and ask for a raise. It's all related. It is all very, very related. Yeah, I just, yeah, this is so cool. This is awesome. And I want to stir the conversation in the direction of self authority and self leadership, because I really feel like when we are doing, busy, 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 we lose that connection with our authentic voice. And when we lose the connection with authentic voice, of course, when we have trauma, that's also another reason why, when we have emotional trauma or big T trauma, it's a very big reason why we lose that inner trust and connection with what we want and start giving away our authority to others and listening to others, whether it's online people, I don't know, like politicians, whatever it is. So let's talk a little bit more about that, receiving, in not just receiving abundance, receiving money, receiving clients, but also receiving yourself, receiving your own wisdom.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. One big shift that I made in my business quite recently, thanks to this burnout, is realizing that I wasn't in alignment in the creative process.
Okay.
Like I was so obsessed with the result.
Mm.
And that was like where I was getting the satisfaction from. I was creating, it wasn't fun. Like it was like very urgent based. Like I have to create this
You're in
program
survival.
and yes, and that was not in alignment, and it was very much about doing. And so I made this shift into, and it's hard. And again, I have to work on this daily. Like it's not something where it's like, oh yes, now I create and it's so fun. Because I noticed that urgency arising, and I really have to be conscious about it to not let it drive me, because the urgency I feel is actually in authenticity. Like it's not really who I am, and it's not my voice, and it's not in alignment. So I even have my cards here on the
Oh, yeah,
table.
yeah.
I have a bunch of, I have so
Cards.
many so
Like
many
angel cards.
card
Yeah.
decks. And yes, and something that I've been doing is I when I create a program, which now I'm launching Business Bliss.
Business Bliss.
That's what it's
That's such a
called.
cool name. Business Bliss.
It's cool, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll hear more about it.
It's a 3 month
Oh.
it's a 3 month program that basically, the way that I create it, it's almost like the process that I went through is what I want to teach the people taking this program, which is every step of the way, I would ask the questions that feel stuck or feel curious about. I would kind of use cards for that with my intuition, and I would journal about it. And it's kind of going with that idea of how much safety you can get from different symbols and metaphors and words. That brings me so much joy. And I would just find like so much meaning in that process for me as a person, and so much fun. Like it's almost like making your business like a spiritual experience, basically. And so I feel like that really brings you more into alignment with yourself, because when you're in survival mode, when you're in that rush and in that madness, you just cannot connect to
Of course
yourself.
not.
It's not your higher self. It's like another version of
It's your
you
survival self.
that, yeah, constantly triggered. Those and you're communicating that out into the world. So if you're not feeling safe, other people can feel your nervous system before you even talk. Even if you say all the right things, other people can sense there's danger here. There's danger here. Get away, get away, get
Something's
away.
off.
And I work with so many clients that are just repelling people. And I used to be like that. And of course, I still can fall into that. You know, I can actually feel sometimes my energy, I do nothing and people are just like coming in because my energy is really attractive to them. And sometimes I feel I get into this urgency and this like survival mode, and I'm just repelling people, you know, and they can just sense that it's not safe. And I think when we're having fun and we're resting and which is again so challenging. So it's really something I want to teach like practices around, because it's a practice. It's not like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have fun, cool. Like I'm gonna do
No,
that.
you have to do it again and again and again and again and again. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah. And you have to be so conscious of your energy and really feel like, am I in survival mode right now? I'm going to pause. I'm going to check in. What's coming up for me? What other triggers coming up? And I'm going to regulate myself. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to take a nap. Like I'm not going to use this survival energy to create from, because the results are
No.
not going to be good, and it's not going to be fun. Like it's going to suck.
It's not going to be fun for you, and people are going to feel it. And I do feel like the intention in which we do things has a lot of impact on the results. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying. When we manifest, it's also when we create, because manifestation is really receiving and creating and co-creating, right? So when we create from survival, it's not going to have the same impact as when you're creating from expansiveness, spaciousness, and co-creativity with the universe and with the energy, right? So what I really love is that you're a projector. And you mentioned many things that you allowed yourself last year when you needed to have a nap pre-session and post-session every time. So as a projector, you naturally have access to energy very different than generators or manifesting generators, obviously. But just allowing yourself to do that is a revolution in itself, right? Like it's very what's the word, like counter rebellious.
Rebellious.
It's counter
Yeah, culture.
countercultural to rest, honestly. And then as a
Yeah,
projector,
totally.
you really have that foresight of this is what's going wrong. This is how the coaching industry is actually toxic in these ways. We are giving away our authority to like all these like influencers or gurus or whatever, and we're giving away, even if we don't actually work with them and invest money in them, we're still investing time. We're still overriding our own intuition and listening to them. I was stuck in that cycle a lot of like, oh, my intuition is saying one thing, but this really successful person is saying another thing. They must know more than me. So I overrode myself. And obviously that started in childhood when we were told that the teacher is always right, and like override your bodily functions and hold it in and blah, blah, blah. Just, it starts from there. So there's no shaming here. But with the program that you are sharing about business bliss, it's like you're not the guru here. You are teaching people how to reaccess and retrust their intuition, retrust their innate knowledge, because ultimately my biggest months come from when I rest, and my biggest months or my biggest days come when I don't look at my phone, honestly. And it's so hard.
Oh, Nadine, guess what
What?
happened? You won't
I
believe
believe
this.
it.
So I literally, for New Year's, we had this huge ceremony at our house with like 15 friends. It was so cool. And one of my things was like change my relationship with my phone, because when I was really like going through the
Mhm.
burnout and like all the crazy shit, I spent 8 hours a day on the phone. Eight
Ooh.
hours. Yeah. I know. And I had like also so much shame around it. I was like, oh my God, like obviously this is not what I want my clients to do, all these
Yeah.
stories. But I knew that I was using my phone for regulation because I was really struggling.
Mm.
And then literally the next day, my phone broke.
I remember you shared that. I think we had a session like 2 days later. Yeah, you're like, look at my phone. Like, see?
It was like green. It was green. And I was like, and my partner couldn't stop laughing. He's like, you broke your phone. And I was like, no, I didn't. It's like, no, you did. You literally manifested it. I was like, great. And it was the best. Like, sometimes we could do all the practices in the world and all the things, and like, we're still not getting to where we want. And it's like the universe is like, okay, fine, I'll help you.
Yeah.
And like breaks your phone. And then now I'm using like a replacement phone, and I just have so little attraction to it.
Mm.
Like I just don't care about its existence.
Mm.
And it's just so cool. Like because I retrained my body and my brain just by not being on the phone. Like I couldn't be on the phone, and I was like, this is so nice. I have so much time and I'm going to read a book and I'm going to do Pilates and like all these things. And it was just so wonderful. And I had all this like creativity come and all these cool ideas. And so, yeah, I think a big part for me, as you said, your personal life, it was like really not wanting to look at my relationship
Mm.
for a
So
really
you
long
were,
time. I was like, I want to
yeah, you
avoid
were like
this.
diving into the business more. I totally resonate with that.
Distracting
Mm-hmm.
myself, just distracting myself, because my relationship used to be my source of safety,
Mm.
and then it turned into my business as my
Got
source
it.
of
Yeah.
safety. My relationship is my source of
Yeah.
stress, and now it's like my partner and I are like shifting it together and creating more safety in the relationship. But there are many
Yeah.
sources of safety, right? It's not just it's all these
You
things
just
give
said
you a
that.
sense of
There are many
safety.
sources of safety. So we can't just rely on money and our feeling of abundance for a source of safety, because we can resource safety from inside of us and from other relationships. I had 2 years where my home life was very like tumultuous. We were moving. We moved from Albuquerque to Melbourne, Melbourne back to Albuquerque, and it was right in the middle of the pandemic, and we had to put RB inside of a plane on her own in a crate, and I wouldn't wanted to. I couldn't even like, and then the furniture would come, and were sleeping on like a couch. It was my home life was just a source of stress, because every time I don't look at my computer and I don't look at work, I'm looking at a box. Or I couldn't even look at my dog because I was going to do something to her that was not nice, putting her on a plane without me. That's cruel. I had to do
Yeah.
it because I wanted her with me, right? But I couldn't look her in the eye for like 2 years. So what I did was I worked my ass off. I kept pouring my, I resource safety, as you say, from work, and that was that was not great. I'm not shaming myself. I had to
Yeah.
do what I had to
Yeah.
do, and we all need soothing mechanisms. We all need that. But it was a really tough time.
Exactly.
It was honestly a very tough time.
It's so tough. I had a coach, Natalie Kennedy, Anxious Love Coach is her Instagram. She's one of my favorite humans. And she was kind of the first one that made me look at just this wheel of life.
Mhm.
It's just all these areas of your life, and you give them a score. And now I do it with all my clients too, a satisfaction score. And she's like, so the problem maybe is not just in one
Mhm.
area. Like you're putting all the problems on one area. Maybe there's like a lot of things going on in different areas. And so you have to, coming back to what you said about alignment, you have to bring back your embodiment, your joy, your satisfaction, your values into all these areas, because you're not going to be satisfied through just
Mhm.
one area. Like you have to tend to yourself as a whole
Yeah.
human and not
You're a whole
like
human.
just a
Yeah.
business.
We're not a business,
Yeah.
right? It's like when you ask people, "Hi, what do you do?" I'm a blah. No, no, no. Like no, and I'm not asking you what do you do for a like for work. We're more than that. You know what? You just said something that brought up a thought. I kind of lost it, but it's very important. Mm, it's more about like yes, value. You were mentioning values, but I kind of want to talk about value because we are taught that our value comes from doing. When you're an online coach, even if you're a 9 to 5er, even if you're a stay at home mother, whatever you are, we place our value in how productive we are. Like, for example, if I worked all day, I work from home and I work all day, and my husband comes home and I didn't do the dishes from lunch, my lunch and my breakfast, I feel so bad. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And he's like, you were working just like I was. You just was working at home. And I'm like, thanks. Thanks for reminding me of what I already know. And I feel shame because my value as a wife, I'm Arab, so of course I still have that ingrained in me that I'm trying to decondition of like, yeah, my place is not in the kitchen. Right, even if that was my mother isn't like that either, but we still have that conditioning in my genes, probably, I don't know, in my lineage. But like our value as human beings can come from just our smile, can come from our co-regulation. If you're a coach, you don't have to like fill up the whole time with your client with value, value, value. You just by offering them co-regulation, that is value. You don't have to like stack. Yeah, right. You
Huge.
don't have to stack your podcast episode with like truth bombs and like, oh my God, breakthroughs. Just by hearing your perspective on something is value. What is your take on that?
Oh, this is a huge shift I had
Yeah.
to make, because I was like, I have to be productive. The only time I feel good about myself is when I'm productive and I'm
Yes.
producing. And it's so funny because I was born in a communist
Hmm.
country, and then I grew up in a slightly communist slash socialist slash capitalist country, and then the
Yeah.
US, So, and all of them really, communism too, it's about what you
Yes.
produce, it's
Your
about your
value.
value from production. And I really, really grew up with that. And I think the big change that I made, and I think that's actually like much harder, is who do I embody?
Hmm.
Like that is like you said, co-regulation. It's because you've worked on yourself so much that you provide something to other people, to yourself, to the world, just by being, just by being in the room. You're just there, your energy is there. That can actually like change people without you even like doing anything.
Mhm.
But in order for that to happen, you really have to be conscious about how you show up,
Yes.
um, who you're being, how you mess up and apologize, like
Mhm.
just all these things that are really
Very
challenging. It's so
challenging.
much easier to be like, I'm so protective. I made this landing page and this thing and I wrote this post, than to be like, I was really triggered and I sat with that and I really like looked inward and worked on that. And that was actually the most productive thing that I did
Mhm.
today, and it doesn't even look like anything on the outside. And even trusting that, I think, is so
Mhm.
revolutionary, that that is productive to actually work on your energy and then change how you show up to the world, which is, by the way, the only way that I actually started making money in my
I
business.
believe
That was
that.
like, all the marketing shit, all the strategy is cool, but it's kind of almost nothing. Like, that's what I really believe
I
that.
agree with you. I've spent so much money on marketing strategy, blah blah blah, all that stuff. I mean, it taught me things, right? It taught me things. It's just like my clients that come to me and they're like, "I learned all these financial strategies. They're in my brain, but not in my reality." Haha. You know, and it's not funny. It's really
Exactly.
it's not fun to feel stuck like that. And I don't know, like there is a lot to that, but just in the way that you show up and in the way that you are with people is like, you are a gift. You know, your smile is a gift, your presence is a gift, your perspective is a gift. And you listening to people without judgment or criticism and allowing them to speak is actually a gift, you know, because I know that safety is a visceral feeling, right? Like a lot of people, and I'm not dissing anyone here, but a lot of people feel safe if someone has a bunch of letters after their name. And that's their right. That's how they feel safe. Other people feel safe just from a felt sense, right? Like when I started working with you and Anna, I did not care about your credentials or what like I didn't even know who you were. I was like, this is the program for me, right? Like I bought a big program from you both. Then I was like, oh, I should follow them on Instagram. I had a feeling,
That's
right? It's
hilarious.
so funny.
That's how I do things 100%. That's always, I used to sign up for things like the other
Yeah.
way where I would like research for
Uh-huh.
hours. And now I just
It's
never
just a
do that.
felt sense. I looked at both of you and I'm like, yeah, I feel safe. Okay, I'm going to do this. And
That's
I'm
awesome.
careful with where I spend my money, but mostly I'm very careful with where I spend my time, right? So I just feel like I'm the person with a felt sense. So I just want to like circle back and say that safety is more of a felt sense thing. And whether you're a friend or a practitioner or a healer or a partner, you don't have to do. And again, easier said than done. It's not in your doing, it's just in your essence. It's just in your energy. It's just in your beingness. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have one
Of
question for
course.
you that I'm so
Go.
curious about. Okay. So let's say you get into a place where you're really stressed about
Mhm.
money. You're like so stressed about money. You're looking at your bank account. You're like, shit, it's not going well. I don't like, just everything feels unsafe. And you know that energy is not going to help you receive, but you're kind of, you're in that energy. So I wonder, what are your personal practices around that?
Well, so the first thing that comes to me when in these situations is shame. Right? How what's wrong with me? Why did I? How dare I? Why? How did I bring myself to this point? So it goes to what we said earlier to where we're not like gaslighting ourselves. We are acknowledging that we are in a pickle, we are in a tough financial situation, and there is a layer of shame because we blame ourselves. So, how can we shift that blame into more ownership? Okay, where we're not blaming the outside external circumstance that may have resulted in us being in a pickle. We're not blaming ourselves, but we can perhaps take ownership of, like, okay, I'm here. What can I do now? And then when we're out of it, what can I do so that I never see that again? You know, I never find myself in that situation again. And if you do find yourself in that situation again, no shame practicing that ownership of like, how can I get out of it? So there are several ways where we can get out of this financial situation where there isn't enough money at the end of the month, kind of thing, you know? So there is, I don't know, like it depends on the person. For me personally, I ask the universe, and I just ask people like, do you like do you want money coaching? And a lot of times they're like, yeah. And it just sometimes feels to me personally that when it happens, when if that were to happen, it's just a symptom of something or an invitation to lean into something, to ask, to heal my relationship with asking and heal my relationship to receiving. um my personal money wound is about money hoarding. So my situation usually is the opposite of like, I do have pockets of money squirreled away. So for me to find my bank account empty, it's very hard for me to transfer money from one account to another. I know it sounds ridiculous, but it really sounds like, it feels like I can't do this, because it just feels like when a bucket is empty, it's empty. I don't have money in that bucket. And I just wait until the bucket is filled. So that's basically it. But when in general, like when people come to me and they're like really in a pickle, there are many ways, there are many ways where we can ask for an extension on rent. We can ask for, it's just working with that asking muscle. That's sometimes the invitation. So it usually is an invitation for something, even if we are in a rough situation. And it's easier said than, I'm sitting here feeling good about it. And when I'm in a pickle, it's hard to access that knowledge that I have. But the first thing I do is always know that I'm going to be okay, regardless, right? We're all going to be okay. Yeah. Is that a good answer for you? Does that
I love it. It's beautiful. I love it. And yeah,
what did
thank you
it
for that.
how
I'm
did
sure it's
you how did that answer land in your body? I'm curious.
well, the part that you said we're all going to be okay, I think that's the part that I need.
Yes.
Each person needs a different part, right? And we all sort of get triggered in a different
Hmm.
way when our triggers are lit up. Which for me, when I see things dwindling down, woo,
Yeah.
that's a big trigger. And I think it's like I'm not going to be
Hmm.
okay, And it's really interesting because it's not mine at all. It's
It's not
really
your, yeah, it's
generational.
not
It's
yours.
really not
Hmm.
mine. It's really my grandma being like, I'm gonna starve because she actually
She did,
did.
yeah.
So it's that feeling. And grocery
Oh my
stores,
god,
no bigger
right?
trigger do I
Same.
have. I am a food hoarder through and
Hmm.
through.
Oh my god.
So when I see even my pantry dwindling, like my pantry, I'm like, my pantry needs to be like, my friends always make fun of our fridge when they come over. They're like, you guys are such Holocaust survivors. Like every time they open our fridge because it's
Yeah.
exploding. And so, yeah, I feel like when you said that, we're all going to be okay. And people are here to support you. And, it's just really practicing that
Mm,
because again we might feel it's one thing to understand it in our brain and it's another thing to
of
feel it.
course.
So I think that practice, when you said it was like
Yeah.
I felt this relief and I feel like I just need to continue to feel that,
Yeah.
to feel the reality of that and to feel how many people like love all of us and want to help,
Exactly. Yeah.
and just want to support you and help you be creative about things. And how also I think we all have our own sort of
Hmm.
resources that we can lean into. And mine is like the universe wants you to be good.
Yeah.
Like the universe has your
Yeah.
back basically. It's here
It's
for
here
you.
for
And
you.
so you're like learning
Yeah.
something. And for me it's always like finding that thing that I'm
Hmm.
learning every time that those triggers come up.
Yeah, and I was on a call yesterday with a new client, and I was kind of, I don't really necessarily talk very openly about this because it's probably my own personal edge, but I have reached to a point in my relationship with money where it used to be my oppressor. Like it was a stand-in for my dad. I left Jordan, but I brought money with me because you can't escape money. And it was my oppressor. I was always like, oh, will money allow me to do this? But I've done so much healing on my relationship with money that now I know it will be there for me. I know that if I decide to do anything, any project, that it's going to come. I have like no shadow of a doubt that it's going to come. And here's the thing, if it doesn't, it has nothing to do with how abundant or worthy I am. It's just that it's probably the thing that I want is not the right thing for me. Maybe there's something better for me, right? So I don't attach it to my worthiness. I don't attach it to my innate abundance, because we are all abundant, right? But it's just such a nice friendship that I have with money, that it's my buddy now. It's my mate. I know that it will come along on any adventure that I want it to. So it's a really nice place
Ah,
to be in, and that's what I teach.
I want you to record a whole podcast just about this. You said you don't talk about it. Like, I want to hear a whole podcast on just your journey to get to this place and how this place feels in your body, in your life. That's beautiful.
Of course. Well, I think that maybe it will be a better podcast if I'm interviewed. So maybe I'll bring you back to to ask me these questions, or we can do it on yours or whatever,
Yes,
But um,
yes.
it's definitely not an easy thing to talk about. I talk about it a lot inside of my programs, but like just my friendship with money and how it used to be and how we made amends, we became really besties, right? it's it's a beautiful thing. Maybe that's
That's
going to
so
be
cool.
my new book title, like Money's My Bestie. Money's your mate.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes, please. We got to talk about it on my podcast. I think that would be
That would be
beautiful.
lovely.
How I became best friends with
That's so
money.
cool. I like that. So I feel like I want to do a little bit of a 2 minute practice just on right off of what you said, that when I said we're all going to be okay and you felt that in your body. I want to invite everyone to kind of feel feel that in their body. So maybe you're doing the dishes, maybe you're driving, maybe you're working, maybe you're just sitting there listening, maybe whatever you're doing. When I say the word, we're all going to be okay, allow that to resonate somewhere in your body. And just sometimes it makes it easier for us to access it if we take a couple of deep breaths in. So let's do that together. Let's just don't close your eyes if you're driving, but just take a breath in, just taking a breath into our belly, allowing it to expand, and then just blowing it out, exhaling as if we're blowing on hot soup. And inhaling again. And one more time. And just seeing where these words land in our bodies. We're all going to be okay. We are all loved. The universe loves us. I know there might be some doubt and some, skepticism that might come up for you, but let's just put those aside for a minute and try to focus on the part of us that where these words land. Maybe it feels like a warmth. Maybe it feels like a lightness. Whatever it is, just very, very gently acknowledging that feeling in our body and becoming more and more familiar with it. We're all going to be okay. It's all going to be fine. We are abundant and we are loved. Ah, taking a deep breath in and sighing out. Yeah. How did that feel, Marina?
Oh, I love it. It's so funny. I felt full.
Mm.
Like my belly felt full because that's my favorite
Yeah.
feeling, but not like ugh, full, like good full, like
Satisfied,
nourished. I would
nourished.
say I felt nourished.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
And for some reason, like saying we are abundant for me doesn't land as strongly as we are all going to be
Yeah.
okay. Oh my gosh, it's so
Yeah, I
dark
can barely
now.
see
Here,
you.
you can barely see me.
Oh, that's funny. So, Marina, where can people find you? And tell us briefly about Business Bliss. And of course, I'm going to link everything in the show notes.
You can find me on Instagram at marina.y.t. That's the best spot. And on my podcast, Deep Within. And Business Bliss is a program I'm so excited about and so proud of. It's an intimate program. It's for 6 participants. It's a 3-month container where basically we'll be diving into how to create an easeful, flowy, blissful business and kind of the work that goes into it energetically, also in terms of your systems and your strategy in your business, but really, really emphasizing that those energetics. And when you get into that, survival mode, how we can walk ourselves back into safety and embodiment and presence to make our business fun and sustainable and long lasting.
Love it, love it. I will link all this in the show notes. And on this note, I also want to announce that CFA, Create Fulfilling Abundance, my 6-month program, is open for enrollment. We start in March, and if you want to create that yummy friendship with money, where money comes with you or comes to you whenever you want to go on an adventure, save for a house, pay debt, pay your student loans, whatever it is, come and join. I will also link that in the show notes, and it just starts with booking a connection call with me, and we can just chat about it and see if it's the right fit for you, and we go from there. So thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you loved this episode as much as I loved having Marina on the Money Healing Podcast, and I will see you all next time. Thank you. Bye for now.